All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Q3 2025 quarterly webinar for the Stellar Development Foundation. We are super psyched to have you all here today. And if you've been here before, then you know the drill. We're going to take you through the progress towards SDF's 2025 growth goals, share what's new and what's been happening across the network with you all, and highlight Stellar's real-world impact. This quarter, our spotlight is on real-world assets, or RWAs, the category that's shaping the future of blockchain adoption. RWAs are not just a theme for us. If you know anything about the Stellar network, they represent to us the most tangible proof that blockchain infrastructure is being used for everyday finance at scale, which, if you know, we care a lot about. So, as always, you can submit your questions anytime using the Q&A panel, and we'll answer as many as we can during the final segment of today's session. So let me go through what we're going to hit today. Today, you're going to hear from four of our executive leaders here at SDF. We have Denelle Dixon, our CEO and Executive Director, José Fernández da Ponte, our new President and Chief Growth Officer, and Raja Chakravorti, our Chief Business Officer, and Tomer Weller, our Chief Product Officer. So you've got a great cast of characters today. Here's how we're going to move through today's session. We'll begin with Denelle, who will ground us in SDF's North Star and our growth goals, just as a quick reminder. Jose will then discuss growth on Stellar and what the data tells us about the network expansion and real user activity. After that, Raja will take us deeper into the institutional traction we're seeing behind the real-world assets on Stellar. And Tomer will then walk us through the product roadmap, including the launch of Whisk and SDF's privacy strategy that happened last quarter. Finally, Denelle will close us out with a look back at Meridian 2025 in Rio, if you know, you know. And what's next as we head into the end of the year? Can you even believe we are in Q3, or we are now in Q4, heading into the end of the year? After we wrap, we'll return, we'll do our Q&A, and we will wrap until we see you in Q4. So thank you again for joining us today, and I will hand it over to Denelle.
Well, thank you, Ellen, and hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you. So every quarter, we come back to the same three North Stars and that guide our work. So building a trustworthy tech stack that advances adoption, focusing on everyday financial services that drive real-world use, and ensuring SDF remains future-proof and sustainable for the long term. So these pillars are the foundation of our strategy, and our 2025 growth goals bring them into measurable focus. So we're aiming to rank in the top 10 for DeFi TVL, the top 10 for monthly active addresses, and to reach 3 billion in on-chain RWAs. What excites me most about the Q3 is it shows meaningful progress across all three fronts, which is setting us up for a really strong Q4, and maybe even more importantly, a strong beginning to 2026. So this quarter was truly defined by momentum in performance, partnerships, and in what's ahead in Q4 and 2026. So let's hit the highlights. First, developer momentum. We're seeing 37% growth in full-time developers on Stellar. That's 8 times the industry average, which is really awesome. And as more devs come into the ecosystem, we're seeing engagement deepen. Developer participation is up 70% quarter over quarter across hackathons, workshops, and activations. So this translates directly to ecosystem expansion. Second, smart contracts on Stellar and the DeFi ecosystem continue to grow. We are seeing more than 1 million smart contract invocations on average each day, which is a 700% increase over Q2. And that's not all that's growing. So are the number of assets coming into the network. This quarter, we welcomed assets from PayPal, Ondo, Centrifuge, Red Swan, Mercado Bitcoin, and more to the network. So third, real-world results. $5.4 billion in RWA payment volume hit this quarter. Payments continue to be the dominant use on Stellar, and this is where it's all happening. Now, here's the stat that matters. According to ChainSpec, Stellar ranks as the number 4 most used blockchain measured by actual activity, not hype. Stellar's 218 transactions per address demonstrates genuine utility, and we continue to lead in tokenized treasuries and yield-bearing real-world assets. SDF also unveiled a privacy strategy, which we believe is the next big opportunity to capture institutional adoption as we enable both transparency and confidentiality. The momentum that we're seeing in developer growth, institutional deployments, and transaction activity is awesome. And it really positions Stellar well leading into Q4 and, of course, 2026. So let's take a deeper look at how that momentum shows up in the data. Jose, over to you.
Thank you, Denelle, and hello, everyone. So in Q3, we are continuing to build on the momentum that we have seen all year. And it is very clear that the Stellar's growth is only accelerating. The network is scaling faster, deeper, and with more real-world traction than ever before. Developers, as Denelle said, are joining faster than into most other ecosystems. Active wallets are growing faster, and Stellar users continue to transact more than anywhere else. So let's have a look at the numbers. Across the board, we can see very, very strong momentum. We have processed roughly 1 billion operations during the quarter, which is a 70% increase from the second quarter of the year. And the number of unique addresses rose to nearly 9.8 million. The average ledger closed in just 5.76 seconds, and the network reliability is a very impressive 99.99% uptime. Transaction fees remain negligible, and there are just a few hundreds of a cent per operation. That combination of speed, stability, and affordability is what makes Stellar such a powerful platform for developers, consumers, and enterprises alike. When we look at how do we stand across the industry, the Stellar network remains one of the fastest and most cost-efficient and reliable blockchains for real everyday use cases. As Denelle mentioned, ChainSpect just highlighted Stellar as the #4 most used blockchain in history since TGE, and during Q3, we processed over 330 million payments and nearly 730 million successful operations, near instant finality and industry-leading cost efficiency. If we want to have some perspective and put this in relative terms, on the Ethereum side, they average 12-minute finality, the fees are over 80 cents per transaction, while we have confirmations in seconds for a fraction of a penny. We continue to be hundreds of times cheaper per transaction than Ethereum, and we are 20 times cheaper than other high-throughput blockchains like Solana, making Stellar the blockchain of choice for high-throughput, scalable use cases. That combination of speed, reliability, and cost efficiency is the reason why both enterprise-grade users, retail, and developers continue to thrive on Stellar. Let's talk about developers. The developer momentum continues to accelerate on Stellar, and the data speaks for itself. Full-time developers on the network grew 37% this year, outpacing the broader crypto industry by a wide margin. You put it into context, developers on blockchain are growing in single-digit space, give or take 5% a year. We are growing at almost 8 times that pace. That's a clear sign that we are capturing real market share as new developers join and developers continue to migrate from other ecosystems. That growth is showing up across the board. More than 1,450 developers engage in hackathons, workshops, and events like Hack Meridian, which represents a 70% increase quarter over quarter. Daily smart contract invocations nearly doubled as the traction on Soroban continues to increase, surpassing 1 million per day. By the end of Q3, total invocations hit 157 million. And our ambassador program continues to scale globally, with 400 new signups, 160 community events, and double-digit regional growth across Latin America and Asia Pacific. This is what real developer momentum looks like. It's not inflated by incentives, it is earned through usability, traction, and trust. Stellar is where developers are choosing to build and where their work is reaching real users. What this really shows is growth. It's not just in metrics, but also in momentum. Stellar is attracting new developers around the world, and this is where people want to build. We were talking before about RWAs, which is a traditional strength of the Stellar ecosystem. RWAs were again this quarter one of the clearest proof points of real-world traction on Stellar. We have seen triple-digit growth in RWAs with 112% growth year-to-date on the network, fueled especially by strong growth in tokenized US Treasuries. At the same time, we continue to see new and exciting asset classes being deployed on Stellar from world-class issuers like Franklin Templeton and WisdomTree, and new ones joining like Ondo and PayPal, Mercado Bitcoin, Red Swan, Centrifuge, and many, many more. RWA tokenization and Stellar are a match made in heaven, and we continue to be one of the top chains for world-class institutional issuers bringing finance on chain. Raja will unpack this in greater depth shortly. When we look at the DeFi space, this quarter marked another milestone for DeFi on Stellar. TVL grew 71% in Q3, bringing Stellar's DeFi ecosystem to its highest level yet at 144 million. This continues with a broader trend with a 3.6 times increase year over year. And that growth is driven by real users and applications. We see the growth coming from protocols like Blend, users like Beans and Etherfuse, who are bringing composability and attracting sustained liquidity and engagement from end users. Just to highlight one of the cases, Etherfuse continues to stand out as a masterclass in innovation and adoption, with 20 new stablecoins coming before year-end, and the rapid rise of MXNE, the Mexican peso stablecoin that is collateralized by stable bonds. These projects represent the next phase of DeFi on Stellar, tools that make yield and credit accessible to everyday users and not just professional traders. The ecosystem is becoming more interconnected than ever too. In Q3, we announced major integrations that expand liquidity and reach across chains. Layer 0 announced that it's coming to Stellar, unlocking cross-chain messaging and liquidity routing between more than 95 DeFi networks. Two of the most well-known permissionless assets, Centrifuge's DERWA and On the Finance USDY, brought new institutional-grade tokenized treasuries and yield-bearing assets to the network, extending access to on-chain yield globally. And near intents went live, enabling bridge-free swaps across more than 20 chains, connecting assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana directly to Stellar USDC. Finally, let's talk about active addresses. We continue to make steady progress towards our goal to hit the top 10 in monthly active addresses. And in Q3, for the first time, we broke into the top 20 chains in monthly actives, coming in at number 19. To add more context to this evolution in active addresses, let's put that in the context of annual growth. We are seeing impressive year-on-year growth in annual active addresses. This year, the network has seen 97% year-on-year growth, almost doubling our annual active addresses and reaching 3.8 million addresses who are sending real value to the network. And compounding this huge increase in active addresses, not only has the active user base almost doubled this year, those users are engaging very deeply. Across the past 12 months, wallets on Stellar averaged 218 transactions each, which underscores sustained real-world activity and positions Stellar among the most transacted networks globally. When we say that Stellar was built for everyday financial services, it is not lip service. Stellar users are active, and Stellar wallets are transacting a lot. So let me summarize what we have seen this quarter. The network continues to build on its traditional strength in payments and RWAs, more than doubling the RWAs deployed on Stellar since the beginning of the year, and attracting new world-class institutions and continuing to grow the existing base. DeFi is growing aggressively, with an impressive 71% growth in TVL just this quarter, fueled by composable protocols that are aimed at real-world use cases. And users and developers continue to come to Stellar, with 97% growth in active addresses in the last year, and a developer ecosystem that is growing at multiples over the industry rate. The Stellar network is powering real-world finance, and that momentum sets the stage for everything that we will cover with you next. Back to you, Denelle.
Well, thank you, Jose. Honestly, just sitting there and listening and looking at the slides on those stats, it's just really wonderful to see this. It shows that the network's growth is really grounded in that real adoption, and it's not speculation, which I think is really hard for people sometimes to wrap their head around because they hear and see so many numbers out there in the world, but they can trust these numbers. So that brings us to the next chapter of the story, the institutional and business momentum driving the real world assets on Stellar. So I'm going to hand that over to Raja.
Thanks, Denelle. Q3 reinforced Stellar's position as a trusted home for real-world assets. At the end of the quarter, the RWA market cap on Stellar stood at $562 million, a 14% increase from Q2, while total RWA supply reached $786 million, up 20% quarter over quarter. Cross-border RWA payments volume also grew 27% to $5.4 billion, an all-time high. These are institutional-grade assets, tokenized treasuries, funds, and credit instruments that demonstrate how Stellar is being used to bring traditional finance onto open rails. When we talk about our growth goal of $3 billion in on-chain RWAs, this is a trajectory that's already well underway. What's important here is the composition of that number. We measure only yield-bearing assets, the institutional-grade instruments that represent true tokenized value, not just stablecoins or wrapped assets. And that distinction matters because it reflects how regulated issuers and enterprises are using Stellar to bring real financial products on-chain, from treasuries and corporate credit to impact-linked funds. Now, each of these categories is expanding in depth and in quality, solidifying Stellar's network's role as trusted infrastructure for tokenized finance at a global scale. Okay, so the strength of the quarter lies in breadth as well as depth. As I mentioned, total RWA supply reached $786 million, which is a 20% increase over Q2. And that kind of sustained, diversified issuance shows that tokenized assets on Stellar are in production and they're scaling. Across corporate credit, treasuries, and impact-linked instruments, more organizations are choosing Stellar because it delivers the right balance of performance, transparency, and compliance. And the ecosystem is building momentum on every front, from issuance, usage, and settlement, and it's happening in live environments. Now, if you want proof of that utility, if you want proof that utility is the engine of adoption, just look at payments. Cross-border RWA payments volume grew 27% quarter over quarter to $5.4 billion. Now, these are real disbursements. We're talking wages, we're talking remittances, we're talking business settlements, and that is moving through Stellar every single day. And that volume tells us something fundamental. Real-world assets are not just being issued on Stellar, but they're actually being used. And this usage is what we believe demonstrates long-term value. And that is truly the difference between theory and traction. Now, when you look at global rankings, Stellar remains among the top networks by RWA value and usage, currently holding the #3 position for tokenized treasuries worldwide. And that standing is sustained by enterprise participation from issuers like Ondo Finance, Centrifuge, WisdomTree, and Franklin Templeton's Benji, names that represent the institutional core of this market, and it's growing. Okay. This is a really strong indicator that the network has moved beyond early pilots and has taken root as a default layer for regulated tokenized finance. Institutional adoption accelerated on multiple fronts this quarter. Visa added Stellar to its stablecoin settlement network, which is a milestone that connects regulated payment infrastructure directly to the Stellar ecosystem. MoneyGram also launched its next-generation wallet in Colombia using USDC on Stellar, enabling instant cross-border payouts for consumers and businesses. And importantly, through the Stellar disbursement platform, our partners including GIZ, UNDP, and the World Food Program processed more than $4.2 million year to date, which is a 50% increase from the prior quarter. So when you think about all of the things we do, from impact to enterprise settlement, Stellar continues to prove that open networks can deliver trust and reliability at scale. Now, on the tokenization front, the story just keeps getting stronger. Circle's cross-chain transfer protocol, also known as CCTP version 2, went live, which enables seamless cross-chain USDC transfers, while Ondo introduced USDY, expanding global access to on-chain yield-bearing treasuries. And at the same time, projects like Centrifuge's DERWA, Benji, and WisdomTree solidified Stellar's standing as a top network for tokenized treasuries. And of course, we were thrilled that in Q3, PayPal's PYUSD launched on Stellar, connecting more than 400 million accounts and 35 million merchants to regulated digital dollars worldwide. We are confident that PayPal's draw to Stellar, unmatched reach, new use cases, and commitment to innovation will accelerate institutional confidence in on-chain payments. These new assets, along with the network's growing enterprise participation, are why institutions increasingly view Stellar as the only infrastructure that reflects real-world financial services on-chain. Denelle, back to you.
Thank you, Raja. So I was just reflecting on the rank that Stellar holds with respect to treasuries. And it really shows that this is like market disruption and market rotation, but it shows the stability of Stellar's approach. So the network has compliance forward infrastructure, proven throughput, and trusted partnerships, and not just in the RWA space, but across the whole board. So these priorities that demonstrate that we're really paying off all the work that we've put there. Everything you just described, from the institutional traction to the real world usage, it continues to reinforce that Stellar truly leads this category. In Q3, the network's leadership was visible kind of everywhere, from industry events to mainstream media. Coverage spanned from CNBC, Bloomberg, CoinDesk, and The Street, alongside major moments on stage at Meridian 2025, which was so much fun, and a big moment at ECC where we brought Stellar's values of stability and reliability to Con. Across these platforms, Stellar's unique offerings, openness, configurability, compliance, and stability, they all kind of took center stage. The team also really extended that visibility through our Stable Summer campaign, which carried the PYUSD and RWA momentum across all the digital channels. And external validation reinforced what we're seeing on chain. The latest Masari report spotlighted Stellar's industry leadership in RWAs, including being home to the first regulated money market fund on a blockchain. That was Franklin Templeton, of which 93.1% of its market share remains on Stellar, while also highlighting that new assets launched on Stellar, PYUSD, Centrifuge, Ondo's US dollar yield token, USDY, equities and bonds tokenized by Mercado Bitcoin, and commercial real estate tokenized by Red Swan, landing Stellar in the top 10 for yield-bearing RWAs in the industry overall. So all of these touch points, from global stages to daily headlines, reinforce the same message. Stellar is where institutions trust. They meet on-chain utility. If there's one through line in everything that we've talked about today, from real-world assets to enterprise partnerships, it's trust. And trust in open systems really depends on privacy and getting privacy right. So on the Stellar network, privacy is the bridge of trust. For institutions issuing real world assets, moving like payroll or settling trades, confidentiality is the element that makes open networks viable at scale. Without it, you really can't move meaningful value. So our approach to privacy is pragmatic and intentional. We're building it at the application layer, not in the base protocol. And that means that enterprises can really protect what's sensitive, like transaction details or counterparties, but they're keeping the network fully auditable, which is also really important. So that's the compliance forward piece, and transparent where it matters. So this balance, transparency for accountability, privacy for safety, and compliance for scale, is what transforms blockchain from a promise into real financial infrastructure. Privacy isn't just a feature that we're developing, it's the unlock that will really bring RWAs and institutions and impact organizations and bring them all fully on chain, securely, responsibly, and at global scale. So that focus on trust and usability runs through everything that we build. And to show what that looks like in practice, I'm going to turn it over to Tomer, who's going to walk us through the latest on Stellar's product roadmap and what's coming next. Tomer?
Thanks, Denelle. I love that privacy roadmap. I wonder where that came from. Okay, so this quarter marked an inflection point for the network's core technology. And the focus on our roadmap is simple. We want to scale what is already working. Every release we've shipped this year has been about moving from experimentation to execution, giving developers the infrastructure they need to build reliable, real-world applications. And what we've built now positions Stellar to scale from 1 to 10, from early traction to enterprise grade, throughput, and adoption. With a foundation in its place, the roadmap now focuses on 2 key dimensions: scalability and usability. Scalability means increasing capacity and decentralization while reducing latency across the stack. Usability means simpler tools that reduce developer friction and shorten time to deployment. The work we've done this year, and what's still to come, moves Stellar from validation to velocity, from proving what's possible to operating at scale. The biggest milestone this quarter was Whisk, Protocol 23. This went live on mainnet in September. It's the most transformative upgrade to date since the inception of smart contracts. On the scalability side, Whisk introduced parallel processing, aggressive caching of live state, and also the network configuration needed for reducing block times. On the usability side, we introduced unified token events, a single structured event stream to get every token value movement on Stellar, classic and smart contracts alike. In addition to Whisk, we also delivered key infrastructure upgrades. We improved the ETL pipeline and RFP for faster data access and simpler analytics. And the Stellar disbursement platform now offers smoother automation and transparency for enterprises. Lastly, we launched Freighter Mobile, making Stellar accessible for users and devs directly from their phones. I'm just going to check with Ellen that we're still going because my video is completely frozen on this machine.
Yes, we can still hear you, Tomer. So keep going.
That is amazing. Okay, cool. And like Denelle mentioned earlier, privacy is becoming increasingly important focus area for the network. Our product work is already laying that foundation, ensuring that as we scale, transparency and confidentiality can coexist. And we are advancing the underlying ZK cryptography and tooling to make privacy dev-friendly, compliance-ready, and interoperable across the ecosystem. More specifically, our next protocol version, Protocol 25, will include the BN254 pairing-friendly elliptic curve, which will be immediately used by Noirlang and the RISC-0 verifiers, both making ZK more accessible for developers. In addition, Protocol 25 will also include the Poseidon ZK-friendly hash functions, which can be used by a variety of privacy pools implementations. All of these advancements make Stellar faster and more intuitive to build on, paving the way for broader institutional and developer adoption as we look forward to 2026. Back to you, Denelle.
Well, I'm glad that you were frozen in a really good way because it doesn't look bad on screen, just so you know, Tomer. So thank you. Because we're talking about product, I want to take a minute to touch on the bug that we found within Stellar's first of its kind the state archival feature. So it wasn't in Q3, but I want to highlight that. For those of you who don't know, Stellar's archival feature for archives, unused state for later restoration. So the feature solves the blockchain scalability problem by preventing state bloat and keeping fees low even when because state has been archived. It's a critical feature for Stellar and frankly, for the whole blockchain industry. So the bug was found in Whisk and it resulted in outdated entries being archived and then restored incorrectly, producing state that didn't match the canonical on-chain history, and it created some inconsistencies. The good news is containment was swift, the bug was identified, validators voted to pause archival eviction, a patch was released, and all tier 1 validators installed the patch containing the bug in just over 24 hours. So an emergency vote was scheduled on Wednesday, October 22nd, and Protocol 24 went into effect immediately. So reverting the subset of corrupted entries that were never observed by transactions back to their correct pre-archival state. And then one day later, tier 1 validators voted to re-enable Stellar's state archival feature. So bugs are obviously an inevitable part of innovation, but you got to catch them and you got to catch them quick. And as we continue to innovate and optimize the network, we need to understand that issues like the one that we dealt with earlier this month, they're going to happen. But what defines us isn't the absence of those issues, it's how quickly and transparently we respond and how the ecosystem rallies to resolve them. And we did that here. So the recent event reaffirmed what makes Stellar strong: resilience, coordination, and a community that knows how to execute under pressure. Again, that wasn't in something from Q3, but I think it was important for us to talk about here. It also reminds me, though, why events like Meridian matter so much to us. It's because when you need to mobilize a decentralized ecosystem in less than 24 hours, it really helps that everyone you rely on is as invested in the health of that ecosystem and success of the network as you are. So thank goodness for Stellar's consensus protocol, because when consensus is built around trust, not financial incentives, you get a network that shows up when it really matters most. So, which brings me to Meridian 2025 in Rio, where we proved that this ecosystem is thriving. So Meridian 2025 in Rio de Janeiro set a new bar for our ecosystem. We brought together more than 1,000 attendees from 65 countries and 229 companies with over 425,000 XLM transactions through Meridian Pay. We don't try to grow Meridian to be really, really large, because we want to have this like feel of this community that we brought together. So this was a big one for us. And it's proof that the technology we build is being used in real time by our community. So across 2 days, real world adoption took center stage. The conversations on stage reflected the same momentum that we're seeing across the industry, a shift from what's possible to what's actually happening, which is really awesome. The conversations were about builders and policymakers and investors and partners. They all converged around a single vision: advancing open, interoperable financial infrastructure that delivers real world value. It was truly an incredible moment of alignment, and it really reaffirms Stellar's leadership as the home for real world assets and the place where blockchain meets the global economy. Can't wait to see you all at Meridian 2026 in Yas Marina Circuit in Abu Dhabi. Okay, so we're carrying our Meridian momentum forward to our second Stellar House, which is happening in Miami on December 4th during Art Basel Week. It's an experience that will bring together innovation, culture, and collaboration all in one place. It'll be the first ever Stellar House kicked off. We kicked off the first Stellar House in New York City earlier this year, where we explored utility and interoperability and real world adoption with industry leaders and with builders. So Stellar House Miami will build on that foundation and will be a one-day event with firesides, networking, and creative activations. You can scan the QR code here to secure your place for the 4th. So I hope you can make it. Okay, as we wrap up, our theme this quarter says it all: scaling what works and growing stronger with every challenge. Everything we've discussed today, from the growth in RWAs to the developer activity to the infrastructure that's powering it, it really points to one thing: open networks like Stellar are delivering measurable value. So on behalf of everyone at the Stellar Development Foundation, thank you to our builders, our partners, our community for continuing to push this mission forward. And Ellen, I'm gonna hand it back to you for Q&A.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, thank you all for coming. We will dive into some of the Q&A that we have time for right now. Thank you for the great questions that are coming in. All right, let's kick it off with the first one, which is, okay, 3 billion of RWA access has been announced. Great job. Why, thank you. When will it be actually on chain? And I think Raja is going to take this, maybe with, we'll see who else jumps in.
Thanks, Ellen, and thanks for the question. So what I think is really, really exciting is that we have now been able to bring a number of assets onto the network, and now our focus is on scaling them. So you heard today our discussions on Ondo, on PYUSD, on Centrifuge, all focusing on bringing their assets to Stellar. And now the really great work is to scale them up. We got Red Swan coming soon, and there is a whole bunch of opportunities that are coming in the pipeline. I think as we think about pipeline impact, we'll continue to see more and more of these go live. And we're really excited for the trajectory that this puts us on as it relates to RWAs and our leadership in this space.
Awesome. Okay, so here's the next one. How is Stellar preparing for potential regulatory shifts, especially around token classification, cross-border compliance? I think I got another one in here around kind of any concern around the bank lobbies trying to influence regulators on prohibiting anyone other than them to pay interest in blockchain. So maybe Denelle, you can kind of just talk about and touch on the regulatory landscape right now, how we're feeling about it, and how we're engaging.
Yeah, I think that the way that I would look at this is that we've built compliance into the base layer of the network to make it so that any kind of regulated assets that need to go through a process have those tools that they can leverage. So that means that you can have to white label those accounts that can receive things. So from a compliance standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, we have all those tools built in, and so we're kind of already prepared for any kind of compliance or regulatory environment that sets up different standards for tokens and different ideas around how things should be governed. The token issuers can then use the tools available to them to make that make sense from the asset that they're issuing. And also, just given the way that we've built things from the beginning, asset issuance has been core to what Stellar has done for a really long time. So it's kind of a proven methodology about how asset issuers can do this, and that the regulatory environment is pretty well aware of these things with respect to Stellar. So I think that, as with any kind of regulatory environment, you're going to have lots of lobbies that are going to want to create certain things that's going to be beneficial. Maybe the banking industry is going to say, and I think some of this came up with respect to even in the Genius Act, not allowing any kind of yield-bearing assets to be part of stablecoins. The truth of the matter is that's just part of the way that this political environment works, not just in the US, but kind of everywhere. And what happens in those, if the banking lobby wins that and it's just banks that can issue those assets, they'll issue those assets and they'll be a part of what happens domestically. And then there's obviously going to be things that happen outside the US, then those assets are going to be also available on chain. So those kinds of regulatory shifts create opportunities elsewhere. And these are global assets that can be used in lots of different places. So I think it's the beauty of a network that's global, where these kinds of, no matter where the regulatory environments are heading, there are going to be different things that are available in other regions as a result of that. So that's the way that I look at this.
Awesome. All right, so I'm gonna throw one that has come in around privacy to Tomer. You guys launched a privacy strategy last quarter. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what you all will be doing to support it, and what's coming next, and where do you see the biggest opportunities when it comes to privacy? So maybe Tomer can take that one.
Sure. We think that privacy is really important, and we're seeing a lot of institutions that are coming into crypto because of the kind of like influx that relates both to the regulatory environment, just generally speaking. I think that with the stable coins becoming such an important topic, people understand that one of the biggest hurdles for adoption is privacy. And so I think there's a lot of interesting work that's being done around privacy in the blockchain ecosystem, but there's definitely a lot to still figure out. Our approach about this is really we still believe in like a transparent network as the basic layer, as the base layer, but we want to enable people building kind of like private islands within that space. And so we're doing several things. We're both investing in building blocks, like I said earlier. That's a lot around crypto functionality and bringing in platforms and tools like Risk Zero, like Noirlang, to help people building in the zero knowledge space. And we will be we'll be bringing even more tools. But we're not only building these building blocks, but we're also bringing in specific protocols that relate to privacy. We're working with Nethermind on a private payments protocol. We're working internally on a confidential token standard. We're also working with the Confidential Token Association on making sure that whatever we build is in line with emerging standards in the ecosystem, and that it's easier for enterprises to build cross-chain with the same standard. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot of room to innovate. And so I welcome builders from around the blockchain ecosystem and the cryptography space to join in. We're going to be in DevConnect in a couple of weeks, and zero knowledge and privacy is going to be a huge kind of like track there. And so there's a lot to do.
Awesome. Tomer stole my transition, which was going to be about DevConnect. So you can find that information on stellar.org/events. Everywhere will be for DevConnect, and like Tomer said, there will be a huge privacy focus. So if you're there, come find us. Come talk to Tomer. He'll be on the ground. All right, I'm going to throw it over to let's see here. How over to Denelle. We'd love to see a stellar stablecoin to tap into the entire ecosystem. Any chance this is happening? And also, as a nonprofit org, any chance you're going to introduce a for-profit arm for acquisitions?
So no on the second one in terms of a for-profit arm necessarily set up for acquisitions. We do have a subsidiary that holds for-profit entities. That's where Vesio sits. And potentially others that could come into it, but we're not going to introduce any other for-profit arm from that standpoint. And also that arm sits underneath the Stellar Development Foundation, which is itself a nonprofit. So that's important in terms of structure. And I'm sorry, the first part of the question was the stablecoin. No, we're not. The Stellar Development Foundation is not intending to issue a stablecoin for the network. There are so many amazing assets that are on Stellar, and that we would rather support the issuance of and the success of those assets than get in the mix and do one ourselves. From this, because we don't think it actually would benefit the ecosystem to be able to do that when they're having the diversity and the competition that exists right now. It's going to mean that those that really care about providing strong assets to this ecosystem are going to even get better because of the competition. And I think that that's the best way for us to be able to create the success that we want to see in Stellar.
Awesome. We just have a few more, and because then we're going to wrap it up because we're already just a little bit over. But I wanted to throw one to back to Tomer around SEF. So someone's asking, what's in store for SEF through 2026? What's the vision? Give us a little bit of what's to come for the Stellar Community Fund, Tomer.
Sure. SCF, which is a Stellar Community Fund, has been running for many years now, and I honestly think it's one of the best funding programs in blockchain in general. It is very fast, it is very accommodating, and we've seen a lot of really great projects come in through that, top of the funnel. I think the one thing that the SCF team has been doing more of recently is rather than just be kind of like at the top of the funnel, but also help companies grow, and companies that are kind of like showing success and any type of kind of like commercial success to help them move forward to like the next stages. I think that we're going to do a lot more of that. That is taking established founders and established teams that are already doing well, either from a commercial perspective or have like demonstrated their capabilities in building like really great tech and product, and taking them forward. And I think that one example is going back to the ZK and privacy space. I think that we're seeing a lot of really strong teams that are looking to build infrastructure on Stellar, and they have proven themselves in kind of like, either in academia or in kind of like R&D in other spaces or other blockchains. And we want to make sure that they're getting kind of like white glove treatment in building on Stellar and kind of like progressing our privacy roadmap.
And if I may add to what Tomer just said, because I really want to make my pitch to the developers out there. SCF is a fantastic program. Many of the things that we are seeing on DeFi and Blend and others came through the program. So we absolutely want to continue to boost that ecosystem. The broader point on developers, as you saw in the numbers, in an environment in which blockchain developers are growing in the single digits, we're growing at 37%. I think that we are probably the fastest growing developer ecosystem of non-EVMs, and definitely much faster. The L2s are having, most of them, negative growth. So it's a thriving ecosystem for developers. And this is especially important in a world in which there are more corporate chains and closed environments that happen. So for us, it's very important to have an ecosystem where developers tell us what to do. We don't tell them what to do, and where there is openness and permissionless and people can come and build. So SCF is a fantastic instrument that we use for that, and we use more, and we want to continue to see that staggering growth in the developer base and the folks who are building on Stellar.
Yeah, and I think someone also asked, like, how do I get started? And just to Jose and Tomer's point, the Stellar Community Fund, I think, is a great place to get started, to start poking around around the ecosystem and what it has to offer and the tooling, and to get involved. So we will throw the link into the Stellar Community Fund here in just a second for anyone to take a look at that. One question really quick that I think is important, and I'm going to throw it to Denelle first, which it says, great progress. I like the massive goals you guys have set. How confident are you guys in hitting these objectives by the end of 2025?
That's a great question. We are still pushing on hitting the objectives, but they were purposefully stretched. They're purposefully stretched because that's how you push yourself internally and externally. But the important thing is the trajectory looks really great. So even if these numbers aren't hit, which of course I want to hit them, but even if the numbers aren't hit, that trajectory is what helps propel us into 2026. And frankly, has helped us already to set our 2026 strategy. So the pipeline looks amazing for the even for Q4 and what that looks like for the growth in Q4, but also in early 2026 and beyond. So again, like we're going to push and push and push and try to get to what we can get to for the end of the year. And mostly, I just love that hockey stick. The hockey stick is what we've seen for the entire year on, frankly, all of the objectives that we've set. So that's what shows us the trajectory.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, but not before I say one last thing, which we didn't get a question, but I think it's worth saying out loud, which it says, not a question, but gratitude and appreciation. I didn't know about the bug in Whisk. I appreciate the honesty in sharing it and then fixing it. That builds trust more, and thankful for everyone who worked hard to patch it. So just that's a shout out to our ecosystem and our community, our tier 1 validators. Again, like Denelle was saying, this ecosystem is built on trust, and that means sharing things transparently and working together to make it done and get it done. So that is Q3. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our SDF representatives. We will see you at the beginning of 2026 to talk about Q4. We can't wait, and we will see you there.
Bye, everyone.